Good morning and welcome back to the Closers Inner Circle podcast with your host Denise Griffitts and Bengay the Third. We are kickstarting 2025 with sales success. As we approach the end of January, can you believe we're approaching the end of January? So we are diving into the first quarter of the new year with a straightforward, easy to follow outline for achieving sales success. And our goal is to really provide a clear roadmap for utilizing. I'm cold, y'all. We've had snow here. I'm in the deep south. We had 10 inches. That hasn't happened till since the 1980s, I think. So it's pretty chilly. I'm loving it, but I'm also my hands are cold and I've bitten my tongue a couple of times this morning, so just bear with me. But our goal is to provide a clear roadmap for utilizing the Closers Berg series to elevate your selling journey. Now, this is what we're trying to do with you. This approach will help you understand core sales principles, apply proven strategies from the Closer series. There's, I think, 7 books now. Number 4 will be mine pretty soon. But really, what we're talking about here are the Closers Parts 1 and 2 by Ben Gay III. They will set a strong foundation for your sales performance in 2025. So, over the next few months, this quarter at any rate, we're going to discuss the fundamental principles of sales that never change. Ben's talked about this a bit. And it doesn't matter. They don't change regardless of the product or the industry. We're going to help you develop a strong mindset. Ben will share insights on cultivating the right mental attitude for sales success, drawing from his vast experience and effective communication. We're going to explore techniques to enhance your communication skills, and that's crucial for building rapport with prospects. Ben has people that he's worked with and known for 50 or more years. No joke. So with leveraging the closer series with a systematic approach, we're going to outline how to use the closers books as a step-by-step guide in your sales process. Oh. And we're excited to share that we'll be dedicating a portion of today's episode, probably at the very beginning, to answering questions from our incredible Closers Inner Circle podcast audience. We've received some fantastic submissions, mostly coming from LinkedIn. Ben, good morning. It's Wednesday and I'm cold.
Quit whining. The
Yeah,
You sent
that's
me a thing about getting 10 inches and so on. And then the most fascinating thing I heard or read from you was it's not as bad as the storm of, what do you say, 1895 or something, the
yeah.
blizzard of whatever.
I
That
think it was
must,
1865. I mean,
was it?
this hasn't happened. We had our last storm, our last snowstorm was about 4 years ago. And it was just a little dusting, it was really pretty. And I went to my neighbors and I said, "Can I scrape some snow off of the hood of your car? I'm trying to make a snowman." And they just laughed at me. It was 2 inches tall and it was perfect. So, but this is very, very different.
We were watching on the news this morning in New Orleans, I think Bourbon Street, I'm not sure, uh, the people out
Yep,
and
I saw
about
it.
on ice, and they say it's 2 inches of ice they got there on the street of hard ice. And they were a couple of younger people, I assume, were playing hockey, ice skates, hockey sticks, and everything. And Gigi said she was watching with me, and she said, Where would somebody from New Orleans get all that?" And I said, "Sweetheart, they're not from New Orleans. Nobody who lives in New Orleans has ice skates, hockey sticks, and knows how to skate. Oh, and a puck to push around." I said,
Right.
"They're visiting from somewhere, or maybe they recently moved and looked in their closet and found their ice skates from Minnesota." But it was really, it was like uh, people, unidentified flying object occupants landing in the snow, the other people watching them. It was like, what are they doing? That's amazing. So, but I'm from Atlanta, and every year we have the March ice storms, which prompt Southerners to jump in their car, find an icy street with a hill, and go sliding down into other objects. So I'm used to the concept.
Well,
uh,
I think I told you that my neighbor, it was, there's something about snow. It started at 2 a.m. and I knew it was going to because my weather app for the first time ever got it right. So at 2 a.m. I woke up, I walked outside and I could hear clink, 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 because little tiny ice. It wasn't really snow yet, but I could hear it. Couldn't
mhm.
see it. It took a while for it to make enough snow dust. But then at 4 o'clock, I, wandered back out there and went, here it is. But later that day, and it snowed for 12 solid hours. And I do have in spots in my yard about 10 inches. But at one point, I heard this rum, rum, and what the heck? Listen, in the deep south, if it rains a whole lot, things shut down. If it ices,
Yeah.
we have bridges, we have water everywhere. So, people wisely try not to drive in it. Don't drive in it. So if you want a pizza, even today, go look in your freezer. Nobody's going to bring you a thing today. But I hear this room, room, and I went out and I stuck my head back out there, and my neighbor has got his golf cart out there and he's popping wheelies. And he was having a ball. And I was thinking seriously about catching a ride until his wife came to the garage and gestured at him. So that was he decided that his snow day was over and he had to go home.
Glad you didn't get out there. You'd have caught part of the wrath. We were stuck in the Denver airport one time trying to get to Atlanta. And I've been stuck in the Denver airport many times. The bartender there used to know me by name. And so anyway, we were 6, 7, 8 hours before we got to Atlanta, and the team that was traveling with me said, "What was the holdup?" Because we kept being told they couldn't get into Atlanta, and the reason they could have gotten into Atlanta, they couldn't have landed in Atlanta, and if they had landed, they'd have been stuck. So we get there and go down the runway, and I look over the side and I said, "Now, guys, understand." It was the Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. On the main runway, plowing it was a golf cart with a blade on the front of it. And I said, "There's your problem. Atlanta's only snowplow is tied up." They said,
Hey,
"That's it."
right,
And I said, "Well, that's
right.
an exaggeration, but why would they gear up for this when it only happens every 10 years and is gone by noon usually?"
Exactly. We don't have snow. We don't have salt. I mean, snow. We have sandbags, but you have to go down the street and get sandbags that are meant for hurricanes. So bring them back when you're done with them. But it's just, we don't have any way to mitigate it. We just have to wait it out. And I'm fine with
Well,
that. I really am. As
yeah.
long as the power doesn't go out and the water doesn't go, I'm good. Now, I will
No,
be unhappy when it all thaws out and I find out just what it's going to cost me to replace everything that died. So,
yeah.
I mean, some of it's just now starting to come back from 4 years ago, but it is what it is.
Well, interesting times when things happen to you that lived in Canada for a while, running a company up there in Toronto, and I was talking to a friend of mine, Bob Ronner, in I think Minneapolis, but somewhere in Minnesota, and I'm saying, "God, it's cold up here and this and that," and I was whining. And he said, "Ben, do you still have that big wall map you always have in your offices?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why don't you go over there and find," and I think it was Minneapolis, forgive me if I'm wrong, it was a place in Minnesota. He said, "Find that," and I found it. And he said, "Now find Toronto, where I was living." Toronto was farther south than Minneapolis or Milwaukee, where it was he lived. He said, "Now shut up." I said, "I'm sorry. I guess I read Canada and figured I was, in the outback." But
No, you're
but it,
thinking of Australia.
yeah, but I wasn't used to it. Atlanta, California, Canada. It doesn't prepare you for Toronto. Well, I've got a wonderful, in fact, I think she sent it to both of us. Wonderful list of questions, wonderful because they
From
revolve around.
LinkedIn. Yeah, and I have to tell y'all, so I'm not through whining yet. When I woke up this morning, 4 degrees. That does not happen in the deep south. Okay, I'm done. Okay, Ben, your
Yeah.
turn.
Anyway, got an email from Roberta Vigilance. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've never had to say it out loud before, although we've become telephone friends. Lovely lady, uh, according to the picture that she has up on her website, and beautiful. And then a lovely lady on top of that. She promotes seminars and promotes getting sponsors for seminars, which is sort of a secret art that most of us in seminar speaking have overlooked for years. Get sponsors to make the seminar even more profitable. And uh, so I hope we find a way in the today in the future to promote her a little bit. But anyway, she said, I trust
Good.
all is well with you. Uh, she had just listened to one of the podcasts, and she said, I'd love to ask Ben some questions. Uh, there's several. And she said, one or as many as you'd like. Number one, when did you start to earn more than your dad? Most people wouldn't know that, but I would. The answer is in about 6 months into 3, 4 months into 1966, which a lot of you people now thinking, God, he's ancient. But I started young in the business and started making money rather quickly. After 6 months, Jimmy Rucker, the greatest salesman I ever personally worked with, my running buddy, partner, high school, and one of my very best friends to this day, uh, and I joined Holiday Magic Cosmetics. And the first 6 months, because I refused to learn the scripts, we didn't make a penny, not a dime changed hands. But at 6 months, I learned the scripts, and boom, I was off and running. And had a $10,000 a month. Every figure I used, multiply it by 10, because this was in the mid 60s. Had a $10,000 a month working part-time, and then a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month rather quickly. So I know when I started making more than he was making, he was a successful guy in the food brokerage business. Uh, and among the little signs was, because your next question is, did you tell him or how did he know? Well, I didn't tell him, but he'd been to a few meetings, so he understood the the surroundings I was in. It was a money-making operation. The cosmetics, frankly, were the least of it. That was a product to justify utilizing the marketing plan, as we proved in 4 or 5 other major operations. We started motor oil additives, Bob Cummings vitamins, uh, et cetera. And so he'd been to a meeting or two and he saw the element. So it probably didn't surprise him. And then I showed up with a Cadillac. Jimmy Rucker and I were cautious. We only bought one Cadillac. And then whoever had the best prospects at the meeting that night, he got to drive the Cadillac. And then we told people, those who asked, oh, that's a beautiful car, and so on. So yes, we got identical car because they maybe had seen Rucker in it the day before. I said, yes, we got them identical, so there'd be no complaints. I mean, down to the radio, the this, the that, and so on. Everything is identical. Both are light blue, and we're very proud of them, THEM. And an older, wiser guy about my father's age said, was standing there admiring one of the cars outside of the American Hotel in Atlanta. And he looked down and he said, yes, they are identical, right down to the tag number. He was
Good.
older, wiser. I got, oh, I should have gotten 2 different tags to go with this story. But I even know when I got fired. This shows that how did I know that he knew, that my dad knew? August 22nd, 1966. Uh, not quite a year, whatever, after we had started, almost a year. He called me into his office because Jimmy and I, being conservative and never having had access to that kind of money, kept our full-time day job working for him as retail detail men calling on grocery stores because he was a food broker. So August 22nd, which happens to be my birthday, he called me in the office. We were there for some reason. He said, "Hi, how are you? Happy birthday. Do you want your present today, now, or tonight at the birthday party at the house?" And I said, "Well, now." And he said, "Oh, okay, go get Rucker." Rucker was out in the lobby, brought him in, and he said, "Jimmy, since you're always attached to Ben at the hip, I figured we'll move your birthday gift up with his. Is that okay?" "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That'd be great." He said, "Okay, here it is. You're both fired." And I said, "What?" "That's my birthday present?" He said, "Yeah, it's obvious to me that you two don't have the courage to go off on your own. You are making more money now than you will ever make in this business, even if you own the company. And you're still hanging around and pretending like you're calling on grocery stores. So I'm just going to break the chain for you. You're both fired right now." We didn't have desks, but he said, "Get your stuff and be at the house by 7 o'clock for your birthday party." So when did I start to make more than my dad? Uh, Early 1966. How did you tell him? I didn't. He told me, but he was aware of the business we were in. And the way he let me know was he fired me. "Did your mom know?" What did she, next question. "Did your mom know? What did she
Right.
say?" Well, that's really a more profound, Roberta, than maybe even you realize. My mother was the daughter of a judge, Judge Jeremiah Mahoney in Andover, Massachusetts. So she was raised around what we call old money. She went to school with the Bushes and the Kennedys and so on. During the Depression, he lost all of that and then died and so on. So she didn't come to the marriage or my motherhood with a lot of money, but she was raised that way and run around in a new Cadillac yelling, "I'm making $40,000 a month," wasn't her idea of class. If you're ever around people like the Kennedys and the Bushes and so on, the only way you know they have money is by reputation or reading the newspaper. They wouldn't tell you. They don't dress in shark skin suits and so on. So mother knew, but she frankly didn't. She was proud of me as a person and her honorary son, Jimmy Rucker, but she was a little disgusted by Cadillacs and tailor-made suits and all the stuff that went with the business. So I had to have several conversations with her about and she said, "Look, here's all I really ask when you're doing all this flashy stuff. Tell them that you were raised better." She said, "I really don't care. I
Nouveau
don't,
riche.
yeah, I really don't care what you do as long as they don't think you learned it from me." She didn't, I don't remember her using the term nouveau riche in that conversation, but that's exactly what she was saying. "You two look like clowns." But in
But
that
mama
element,
loves you.
yeah, yeah, bless your heart. And then Roberta asked, "Were you treated differently?" I'm not quite sure what that question means, but I was treated at home. Uh, I wasn't living at home, but visiting at home, working with my father, etc. They were Other people treated me differently. "Oh, look, Ben Gay, we thought he was going to be a failure. Now he's making a lot of money and he's in the newspaper and he's driving that Cadillac and so on." At home, there was like, no, "Go empty the trash. Since you're here, go empty the trash." Uh, One of the next door neighbors leaned across me one day at a dinner, and my mother was sitting on my right. The neighbor, Aline Harris, was sitting on my left, and she leaned over me like I wasn't there and said, "Francis, when's Ben gonna get a job?" I'm making 40,000 a month, 400,000 in today's money. but I didn't have a job where you went to and clocked in at 8 o'clock and so on. So Ellen Harris was very worried about me and thought it was important that she got a job like all of her kids had. Question 5 from Roberta. What are the 2 Englishes you spoke? I'm not sure what that means either, but it sort of rhymes with a
Yeah,
story I tell. I speak 3 Englishes. I speak proper English when I want to,
right.
Southern English, because I was raised that way. And then I speak Gigi, which is an entirely different language. It requires instant translation in your mind as she talks. And Gigi is one of the funniest people on earth, but it's not deliberate, and she doesn't know it usually till I point it out to her. We were talking about the Coast Guard the other day. I was in the Coast Guard, and I always play it down. It wasn't like the Marines storming Iwo Jima or whatever, although I had some interesting times off of Cuba and in a boat that flipped over and picking up jumpers off the Golden Gate Bridge. But when I thank a man or a woman for their service in a restaurant, thank you for your service. Frequently, they'll say, well, and did you serve? Many are too polite to ask in case the answer is no. But I say, well, yeah, sort of. I was in the Coast Guard. Those little white boats up near the shore, you've seen them probably from your battleship. And I said, we didn't like to get our feet wet, so we stayed close to the shore. So it's a running joke in the family about the Coast Guard versus Gigi calls them the real services. Well, the other day, um, we're watching something in the Army Academy or the Naval Academy, or somebody was playing each other or something that brought them on the news. And Gigi said, does the Coast Guard have an academy? I said, of course we do. And we do, by the way. I said, of course we do. And she says, where is it? In a strip mall?
You
I
know, it's a valid question because I I pay a lot of attention to our military. I'm very proud of them. I've always thought very highly of them. But the Coast Guard is one of those kind of a throwaway accounts, kind of. You just don't
Yeah,
think.
it is.
I
When I
mean,
when I
and I don't mean to belittle anything
no,
about the Coast Guard because,
it's
I'm
it's
aware
the
of them, but
nature of what it does. Yeah.
right, if they're
What
just not as big and as flashy and as apparently as funded as the rest of the military.
Yeah, I got the letter greetings. People say, did you join the military or try and avoid the draft? And I said, I didn't do anything. I just went about my business. And one day I opened a letter and it said greetings. And the total paraphrasing the letter said, you have 30 days to either report to the Army or join some other service. Well, I don't like to sleep in the mud. I didn't like it as a Boy Scout.
So this was during the draft?
Yeah, the draft was going on, and
Oh, I'll be
and
darned. Okay.
the beginning parts of Vietnam, although I'm not even sure I'd heard Vietnam by that time. It wasn't yet the thing it became, and the protests and all that. I just knew I had 30 days to get in something. So something that doesn't sleep in the mud to me would be the Air Force. So I went to the recruiting station in Atlanta for the Air Force. And I said, hi. And the guy says, what are you looking for? Well, you know me. If you give me an opportunity to say something semi amusing, I do it. And I said, well, I was hoping to go maybe get into a service that's let me play a lot of golf, that maybe we get up at noon. And, so I'm kidding around. And he says, oh, you want the Coast Guard.
Oh my God.
And I said, does that count? And he said, yeah, if you don't have any pride. I said, I don't have any pride. Where are they located? Well, it was 2 blocks down the street. And an hour later, Jimmy Rucker and I were in the Coast Guard. He'd gotten a letter too. So that's how we got in. It wasn't a patriotism thing, nor was it running from anything other than I didn't want to sleep in the mud. And then Roberta goes on, I wondered how women were treated in sales. And I wonder how women fit in and or stood out, she said. I assume she's talking about back in the day because it's different today. But I'm not really the best person to ask that question because I was broken in early. All of my corporate experiences were women dominated. I went to work for Macy's, was my first real job. I owned my own business when I was 14, but when I went to work for a company, it was Davison's in Atlanta, which was the secret word for Macy's, so that Southerners wouldn't know the Yankees were in town. And it was a female dominated thing. Picture, if any of you are old enough, walking into a true department store, 3 or 4 stories, elevators, the cosmetic area, the housewares area, or the furniture floor. It was a different world. And everywhere you went, there were exceptions, but everywhere you went, by and large, the people on the floor selling were women. The people in the back room, some of the toughest people I ever met or worked with, were women buyers. As I said that out loud, several of their faces flashed in front of me. I was afraid of them. And I was, 17, 18-year-old kid, and I'm talking to some lady who's been in running big departments and businesses for 50 years. When I became assistant buyer, I walked into the office, a little cubicle I was going to have, and there was a lady sitting there, and it turned out became one of my dearest friends, but her name was Catherine Hadsel. On the day we met, I'm less than 20 years old. I'm a new assistant buyer. She'd been running the housewares department in a clerical sense, but one of those people that made the real decisions. It's like Marty Connolly really ran Holiday Magic, although it appeared she was my secretary. So there's Catherine Hadsel and I'm not stupid. I'd been raised better, but for some reason I wandered over and said, "Hi, I'm Ben Gay. I understand you'll be working for me." And she said, "Sit down, you little son of a bitch." I went,
Did she
whoa,
actually say it like that?
yes.
Oh,
And I
I
said,
like her.
oh yeah, she became one of my dearest friends forever till she died. And so I dropped in a chair like I'd been shot. I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "I eat assistant buyers for lunch. I don't have a business card that has that title on it. Thank you for that small favor, Jesus." She was a devout Catholic. And she said, "I'll put up with your arrogance for a while, but I want it to wear off quickly. And until you know what you're doing, and we're a long way from that, you will do what I tell you to do."
Oh,
And that,
I'm just in love with her.
yeah, and that will,
Seriously, I
I'll
love her
still remember this,
attitude.
and that will save your ass, she said. So I said, "Yeah, fine." And I walk in, and Cliff Beeks, who's a dear friend to this day, I had just met him days before, the other assistant buyer. I walk into our little cubicle and still must have had a shocked look on my face, but this took place within earshot of where he was sitting and the buyer, Cy Fisher, was sitting. And Cliff looked up and said, "So you've met Catherine, I understand."
Did she do the same thing to him? Did you guys, swap stories?
Probably years before, but yeah, everybody knew Catherine
Oh
Hadsel.
my gosh. I
Uh,
love that story.
she was something else. Uh, she had a nickname for Cy Fisher. I forget what it was. She was hardcore Irish Catholic, and he was Jewish. And so she was forever saying demeaning things to him about him being Jewish, but it was in good spirits. It's hard to explain when somebody's that tough. It was in good spirits. I took it that way. Uh, One day, some guy I worked for us was standing in Cy Fisher's doorway, therefore also within 3 feet of Catherine Hadsel, and he was whining about something. And Cy said, "Hang on just a second. Catherine, come here." Catherine got up, came in. She said, his name was Herschel Greenblatt. She said, "Kick Herschel for me." And she kicked him in the shins,
You
or
didn't.
it surprised me he didn't drop him. Today they'd be down in HR or something.
Yeah.
Catherine didn't even know why she was kicking him, but Cy said to kick him, and that was fine. And I just remembered the term. She used to call Cy Fisher a Jewish leprechaun. And
Why?
I don't know. He was Jewish and she
Was
was
he
Irish.
little? Was he a little?
No,
Oh,
no.
leprechaun. Never mind. I made the connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that's it. So and then I went into the cosmetic business, holiday magic, dominated by women. We men strode around and act like we knew what we were doing. Uh, any woman who's ever bought a lipstick knows more about the cosmetic business than I do. I'm exaggerating a little bit, having run two good-sized cosmetic companies, but I wasn't ever into the cosmetics. The women did that. They did the training, they did the recruiting, they taught me what little I knew, and so on. So the original question, how did women fit in? For me, with my personal experiences, the women fit in just fine because they ran every operation. And then, fast forward a little bit, I wind up running the National Communication Center, largest answering service, order taking service in the world at the time, and the first. And look over the floor. There were out of 150 people in the building at any given time. There were, I'm guessing, 5 of us that were male. Everybody else was a female, and everybody else ran the business. And one day I put on a headset, went down into the control room because I wanted to, be one of the people, and I actually enjoyed doing it. Leave my office and all those decisions behind, and get on the floor, put on the headset. And somebody asked something, incoming call, asked something for me, and we got disconnected, and I'd already written half the order out. So I stood up over the cubicles and said to the room, uh, when a Mrs. Johnson call, I've already written the order, and just come to me. And some lady, I'm not sure I even knew who she was, said, "Sir, that isn't how we do it. They just start over." And I said, "Oh, okay," and sat down. I started the business. I created the
Owned the
industry. I
business,
owned the
right?
company.
Right.
I set up all the systems. Virginia Hellman, I started answering calls on an old card table with a dead plant on it. And this lady is telling me to shut up and sit down. That isn't how we do it. I went, "Oh, okay." So I was used, times had marched on, and my cute little systems when we were making it up apparently weren't in use much anymore. So, and then I gravitate, you're one of them, to strong women. I just love, I admire Southern belles, but as you know, being from the South, some of the strongest people in the world are Southern belles, looking like they're waiting for Clark Gable to come save them. Where in fact they could save Clark Gable or Rhett Butler, whatever his name was, and Gone with the Wind. So you'd have to ask a woman who's been mistreated somewhere, and I'm sure there are plenty of them, but Ben Gay isn't the person. Women have been ordering me around, starting with my sister, my little sister, 7 years younger, my mother, all of my aunts, everybody in business, everybody in certain industries, everywhere I've been. I look for a strong woman and basically say, "Okay, what are we doing?" You know, teach me the business. They're
Right.
smarter, tougher. And I'm speaking in generalities, but I really believe that women, you guys give birth. There's an opening thing, and sometimes again and again. Anybody goes through
What
that?
is that all about? You know?
Yeah.
I used to ask my mother. My mother had 5 kids in quick
Oh
succession
Jesus.
and then married a man with 4. So I was the oldest of 9. And I remember asking her, and I was dead serious. I wasn't very old. I said, "You don't know what causes this?" And she just looked at me. I'm not sure she ever forgave me for that, but I remember my mom was little, tiny, 5 foot nothing much and a half. She couldn't, and we were all tall people. I'm the shortest at 5'7.5". I'm the runt, but she could jump like a flea. And she scared the crap out of us on a regular basis. And I would hear she would put her hands on her hips and I would hear, "Yes, ma'am, Sergeant Mother, sir." And that was the end of it. I mean, she just didn't put up with any garbage.
Well, that she'd have been a good boss of me. You know, 'cause
Well,
I'm
she
used to.
tried with me. It didn't work, but
Yeah, well, you're another woman,
I know.
which proves my point. Uh, I don't remember my sister kowtowing to my mother like I did. She was respectful, but she was a strong woman. She was raised to be a strong woman. So she was. And then it's not in Roberta's questions, but we were talking on the phone one day, and she said, "Yeah, Ben, I believe in the KLT system. Do you believe in it?" And I thought, okay, you're quick on your feet, KLT, KLT, KLT. I said, I don't like admitting my ignorance, but I don't know what the KLT system is. Never heard of it. And she said, well, people like to buy from people they know, like, and trust. I said, yeah, that's my quotation from 40 years ago. She said, well, don't you see it? KLT. And it turned out, I think you and I have mentioned this briefly once before, the people buy from people they know, like, and trust, to which I have added with Rob Anspatch helping me, and with whom they feel safe. But I never made it an acronym, and it became popular in a book that some other sales trainer, Bob, somebody wrote, but he started
Yeah,
using it.
it's Bob Berg. I interviewed him and he used that and I went, hang on a second. I know that
Okay.
term.
Yeah. Well, my
So,
usage preceded his book by 20 years, but I didn't find offense when he did. I said, oh, good. It caught on. That's great.
yeah, we
But
all use it. We
yeah,
all use it. It's part of the lexicon.
well, I was in a group of three who spent all day in a room trying to come up with a couple of others that would stick like that. And one of them was Feel, Felt, Found. Larry Wilson, Wade Cannon, and I came up with, I know how you feel. Others have felt the same way. Would you like to know what they found or I found or whatever? And I have that thrown back at me all the time. And I've learned to bite my tongue because I want to say, that's mine. You know? Yeah, and that one became so popular, we had to quit using it because if you said, I know how you feel, others have felt the same way. And the buyers would say, and what did they find? It became so popular that it was spit back at us. So
Almost a joke.
yeah, yeah, but that's good. It's something so popular it's a joke. But yes, Roberta, once again, I do, thanks to you, know what the KLT system is. Before, as we were getting on the phone, Denise, I wrote down KLT and underlined each letter because I couldn't, it doesn't come to me naturally. I'm used to saying the whole sentence, not acronyms. But I really appreciate, as I know you do, Roberta, you sending in those questions. Feel free to send more. You're not limited, and those were very, very good. No one's ever asked me, when did you start earning more than your dad? How did you tell him? And so on. I thought, wow, that's deep, because it was a thing, But my father was very, very proud. My mother was very, very embarrassed, but secretly proud, I'm sure. And women are wonderful, loving, dominating creatures that do. I told a lady called me one time from IBM, selling me something. I forget what it was, and she was stunning, uh, and a black lady, and uh, yeah, with IBM and so on. And so we talked for a while, and Marcia was still alive and working in the business. My first wife, she came into the meeting or came into the room where I was meeting with this lady, and looks at her and she said, "What did you sell him?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know yet," or something. And Marcia said, "Oh, he'll buy from you. Trust me, he will buy from you. You're gorgeous." She met her out in the hall, I guess. "You're articulate and you're with a major company. Start writing it up." And she walked out of the room because she was absolutely right. Marsha, when she would answer the phones in the old business, some Southern
I'm
belle
I'm
would
gonna
come.
laugh about this for a while. You keep on talking. I'm gonna chuckle.
She she'd answer the phone, "How may I help you?" and so on. "May I speak to Mr. Gay?" And she'd say, "No, not until I know what you're selling and how much it costs. Because when he hears that sweet Southern accent, he's he's gonna buy whatever you want."
Oh my God. I remember the first time I called you, a long time ago, and you were using your sales persona. You don't use your real voice or your real name because you don't want to get caught and stuff.
I
And I
was
don't want
Bob Talbert, probably.
maybe so. And I knew it was you. I knew your voice. And I said, Ben, it's Denise Griffitts. Do that. And that's all I heard. I think you jumped out of your skin and called me Dudette. I have not laughed so hard in so long. I said, so you remember me? And off we went, and here we are.
And I remembered you by name,
Mm-hmm.
talent, and
Yeah,
accent.
you did. I don't have an
I
accent.
Yeah,
We keep
right.
arguing about it. I
Yeah,
have
right.
a drawl. I live in southwest Louisiana. I'm in
Yeah,
Cajun country. To me,
absolutely.
accents are regional. I do not sound like I'm from Cajun country, but I do have a drawl.
You
And when
don't
I'm
sound like you're
tired,
from Cajun. Occasionally, I'll hear something that I would have asked you where you're from if I
yeah,
didn't already know.
yeah.
Southern, you are mainly. And
Yeah, it's just a soft drawl, I think.
yeah,
And when I'm tired, even I hear it and I'll go, oh, geez, quit talking.
talking to the IBM lady uh, somewhere, probably not the first meeting, but in a meeting, uh, it came up, about women and selling and so on. And I said to her, "You and several other ladies I've met over the years make me wish that if there is such a thing as reincarnation and I'm going to be in selling, I want to come back as a beautiful black woman." And she said, "Why black?" And I said, "Because beautiful gets you in the door. Black means they can't refuse you. That'd be racist to do that. And then I want to sell a quality product and so on. But I want to come back as a beautiful black woman to be successful in selling." She was blown away. She said, "Well, it's supposed to be dominated by men," which goes back to Roberta's question.
Right,
Well,
right.
it's not if you're a smart woman. It's not dominated by men at all. It is, but not to smart women. They just glide through that and find it interesting. As Catherine Hadsel said, I eat
Yeah.
assistant buyers for lunch.
Sit down. I love that you use the word glide
Yeah.
because that makes so much, if you've got a good, strong personality, not pushy, not mean, just a strong personality, you believe what you're doing, you believe what you're saying, you have a good product. We've talked about this. I very rarely, and I learned this after talking with you for quite a bit. I rarely get hit with objections, rarely, because I do believe what I'm saying, and it shows.
And you're a sales infiltrator. You may not have known that term, but that's what you've been doing. Like Jimmy Rucker was a sales infiltrator 60 years before I coined the term. He just didn't know it had a title. There are people who glide through life and sales situations, and there are people who bump through life. Everything is a problem. They get up in the morning looking for a problem. They usually find it within an hour, certainly by noon, and there goes their day. And there are those of us who it may be a form of ignorance, but who go gliding through life thinking everybody loves them, thinking the doors will open, etc., and have learned some skills to make them open. And we're the gliders.
Right, right. And it just never occurred to me because I remember, and I've told this story when I had, I talk with my hands, and I had gone to a livestock auction. I've not done it since. Yeah, I know.
How many cattle did you buy?
I bought two little pigs. And they wouldn't take them back. They said, "Nope, nope,
Yeah,
they're
all
yours." And
sales
I,
are final.
yeah. So I wound up with these two little pigs what did I do? I ran home and I picked up some pillowcases and I put them in there very gently, and then I put them in the trunk of the car and cracked it so they could breathe. And I ran to the hardware store, and I am gathering up a crowd. I mean, I was probably in my early 20s, and I am just talking to anybody who might want these pigs. I didn't want to sell them. I didn't want to see them as bacon. I just wanted them out of the trunk of my car. And I felt this little touch on my arm, and I turned to my left, and there was this tiny little man who reminded me of my paternal grandfather, actually. And he was there in his overalls, and he looked like a farmer. He was a farmer. And he said, "Honey, you are the best natural salesperson I have ever seen." And I wanted to slug him. I was so insulted.
How insulting.
I know. And I say this all the time. I mean, I just said, "Okay, thank you." He didn't take the darn pig, so I wasn't, gonna make a fuss over him. But ever since that day, and I finally figured out that I do believe what I have to say. I do present it strongly, and I glide. I do glide, and I'm so in lo I wrote that down. I'm gonna use that from now on. But listen, there is not a day that goes by where I don't feel like if I could find him in heaven, I would apologize for thinking, that was just rude.
Yeah.
We're assuming that I'm going to heaven, but there's that. But he was right, and I didn't have the sense enough to understand it for a very long time, too long, to be honest.
The auctions store, I was taught at a young age for some reason, when you're at auction, keep your hands in your pocket, know what you're doing. So we go to some sort of little antique auction somewhere in Atlanta. I had a date with me who I was trying to impress, and they, they put up two little vases that I think held candles or something, with what's the type of glass you see, red and green and patched together. Uh, there's a term for it. But
Stained
anyway,
glass,
yeah, there's
yeah.
a
Communion
person.
candles or something like that.
Yeah. So anyway, trying to impress her, and I'm gonna make up numbers because I really don't remember what they were, but trying to impress her and caught up in the excitement of the auction, I started bidding on these things, and I think I wound up paying $25 for the set or something. Oh, and she had said, "Oh, I like those. Those are so pretty." So I bid them and then I gave them to her, of course. I had ulterior motives. And the next morning, I'm going up the escalator to the third floor to the housewares and gift departments, uh, where I was an assistant buyer probably at the time. And as I reach eye level with the gift department, I look over on the shelf, and there are the same two little uh, vases or whatever you'd call them that I bid on the night before. And where I spent 20 some odd dollars, it turned out we, in a department I ran, were selling them for $5.99. So
Had one of your employees with you, they would have saved you.
yeah, Mr. Gay,
Yeah, exactly.
don't be stupid. We
Sit
we own
down.
those.
Right. Take a seat.
Yeah,
So,
but I'm telling you, I literally got caught up. I was trying to impress her, and as I said, had ulterior motives. But the main thing that happened was I got caught up in the excitement of an auction. A good auctioneer is really something to watch. Those of you who are
pig,
salespeople,
so just don't, you know.
yeah, find a way to get around a good auctioneer and just watch what's happening.
Oh, they're amazing. They really
Yeah,
are.
my
Really amazing.
my uncle Howard Robinson was a auctioneer at one time in his life, and he was the barker for the hell drivers. You may remember from county fairs. There was somebody's name in front of it. The so and so hell drivers, and they went around the dirt tracks and did flips and all sorts of things. And one of my favorite things, I didn't know that I was going to be a salesman yet, but I used to say to Uncle Howard when I was a little guy, "Do the hell drivers, Uncle Howard, do the hell drivers." And he'd do that. And then I'd say, "Auction something off, Uncle Howard, auction something off." And he'd pick up something and start into the call. They call it the call. And I was just fascinated by it. Then I fell for it. And now I'm a salesman. A couple of things I was hoping we could get to real quick before, since we've got not too many minutes to go, uh, how to use the closers. You were kind enough to be talking about it earlier. For those of you who are new to the concept, the closers is the best-selling, most powerful, most popular series of books on the subject of selling ever written, printed, published, etc. And if you don't have them in your library, you ought to. And then I'll even tell you where to get them. Go to store. This is best pricing and free shipping, which I don't even offer at my site. Stores, stores ebay.com// that is, and this is all one word, Ronzoni Books, all one word, RONZONEBOOKS. There you'll see the closures 1, 2, 3, 4 is on the way, being finished up now by our dear friend Denise Griffitts, and you're going to love that one. I've read bits and snatches of it. And then 5 is done, 6 and 7. 6 is done, but not printed yet, and 7 is being written. And we're going to go on. I've made a pledge. I would get to the closers 25 before I'm done, physically and literally, figuratively and literally. But let me just show you how to use the closer, since we talk about it all the time and teach out of them frequently. The closers part 1 is the best selling. It sold 10.5 million copies when I quit counting 30 some odd years ago. God knows how many it sold now. But it's the red raw meat of selling. I didn't write the original one. I found it almost by accident, and then bought the rights to it and the rights to edit it and rewrite it. But I left the rough and tumble stuff in. Some people would say, would you print that today? And I said, well, I'd probably do some more editing, but it's like penciling corrections in the Bible. I'm not going to do it. But the closers part 1 talks about selling the way it really is at times, not the way we wish it was. And it gives you the kicks, the blocks, and the punches of selling. The people have said, well, I remember the first time a guy said it to me. He said, when I opened the book and started reading it, I got up after a few minutes and closed my office door. I didn't want to be caught reading it, because it gave me, 1, it was a little bawdy, and 2, it gave me an unfair advantage. And I thought, that's good. Wrote it down, and I've used the term ever since. But the closers part 1 gives you an unfair advantage. Look inside what's really going on in selling. And then the closers part 2, which Denise and I spend a lot of time on, picks up where 1 leaves off, but it does it in a different tone. The closers part 2 shows you what sophisticated people really do with the closers part 1 raw information. Cary Grant said the secret of acting was not to get caught at it. That's also the secret of selling. I can use all of the points in the closers part 1, all the psychological maneuvering, everything that's in 1, I can actively use and be aware of, but you'll never catch me doing it, because I had to think out the closers part 2 as I was writing it from scratch. And in particular, the last chapter, sales infiltration, where a group of us, sales infiltrators, operate in a world different from what most salespeople operate in. I don't hear, Denise was talking about it earlier, I don't hear objections. Not like I don't listen to them. I don't hear them because I knock them down before we start. I set the table. I set the rules of the engagement. This isn't my first rodeo. I've been selling since I was 10 years old. That's over 70 years ago. Won a contest selling Krispy Kreme donuts, citywide contest, beat every kid in Atlanta, Georgia, because my father, I was selling a good product, Krispy Kreme donuts, and then my father taught me a little script. And I quickly developed the discipline to use it every time I knocked on a door. I'm 10 years old, going door to door with Krispy Kreme donuts in a wagon behind me. Then I had to get a bigger wagon and make more trips back to the Krispy Kreme warehouse, my house, the basement of our house. Um, so I figured out how to sell. I figured out that it was very easy if people would just get out of their head. Selling is difficult. I could never be a salesperson. Everybody's a salesperson. If you're married, somebody sold somebody on that concept. Uh, and every other relationship you've ever had. The question is, are you a professional salesperson? If you're trying to sell things, product or services, are you a closer? Are you a master closer? And then are you a sales infiltrator? That's the closers parts 1 and 2. And then we go off into in the rest of the series that's done and the rest of the series that's coming, particular aspects of selling. For instance, in the closers part 4, uh, Denise is going to take you into the wonderful world of podcasting, webbing, for lack of a better word. How to be a guest, create a show. Denise how long ago did you start? 17 years ago?
10 years. It just turned 17 at the beginning of this year, so I don't know if it needs a driver's license or a debutante ball. I'm trying to figure out what to do
It's
next.
too young to drink. So,
I know.
yeah. But you
I
started
know.
out 17 years ago in a
Yeah.
bedroom, I assume. And
Now
now
my
in,
office, which in this house, I bought this house when it was a year old, right between Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. But this bedroom, this office was always an office. I bought it from a young couple that moved to Colorado, and it was never a bedroom. It was always an office. So I just went, okay, I'll use that. So that's where I'm right here where I am right now.
uh, super. But she's taken it from that with probably few, if any, listeners to one of the top 1.5% podcasts in the world. So when I thought about, this didn't take a whole lot of thinking, but when I thought about now we're going to ought to add podcasting to the closer series, there was one answer to that, Denise Griffitts. And then real estate is the closers part 5, not just real estate, but uh, great aspects of it. One of the books coming, 6 or 7, it depends on who gets here for, oh, excuse me, 6 is the one that's done, completed, just not printed. So 7 probably will be next. And that's Wes Wyatt and Randy Chavitz talking about the beauty of and the importance of knowing how to work trade shows, which is where almost everything starts in this in the sales world. Joe Sugarman, famous for the blue blocker sunglasses, found them at a trade show. The pocket calculator, he was the first person to sell those. Sounds like ancient stuff, but it was amazing, the newest thing when he came up with it, found it at a trade show. And yet you go to trade shows and there are people on their telephone manning the booth, looking down at their phones, not milling around. They come knowing 10 people, they leave knowing 10 people. They didn't make the contacts they needed, etc. It's an art, like almost everything in selling. So in time, we're
It's
going to have,
absolutely selling. So you need to know how to connect with people and then follow through and then stay connected. And that's something that podcasters really need to understand. And you were talking about what the book is going to be about. And what does it have to do with sales? Everything. In my
everything. Yeah.
opinion, podcasting, especially in this coming new, in the new year that we're in, 2025, I believe is going to be one of the most important things that you can do as a brand, as a business, or even as a mom. Get your voice heard. This is marketing 101.
Yep. And, I'm always being asked, how has selling changed? Uh, Terminology changes. The buzzwords we use change. Feel, felt, found was a dramatic change in selling. People buy from people they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe was a dramatic change 40 years ago. And then, well, how does the salesperson, how do people today relate to the customers of today? How's the salesperson do it? The salesperson lived in the same environment that the customers grew up in. He or she instinctively has evolved. They're already there. It's not like you took somebody out of Willy Loman, Death of a Salesman, like you picked somebody out of the 1930s and dropped them into 2025 without warning. We've all evolved and gone along the way, which is one of the reasons I never understand the question, how's it change? It hasn't changed. Sell quality products that are competitively priced to qualified people, and never forget that all the buyer, and this has never changed, all the buyer really wants to know is what's in it for me. I have $100 bill in my pocket. Do I want to hand that to you in exchange for whatever for your widget or not? And if you can't explain what's in it for me, that widget is worth more than my $100. I'm not going to be selling. So it's a pretty simple concept. And I know without being told that we're out of time. So I'll throw it back to you. Pleasure to be with you as always.
And I have the same conversation, Ben, with people that I'm consulting with who need a website. The first thing I ask them is what's in it for your audience, and they go off on a tangent. Oh, I've got this, and I can do this, and blah blah. No, stop. Why would they open up the door to your website and stay? What's in it for them? That's all they want to know. And it really bothers people because they're like, but I have a computer science degree. I can do this. And nobody cares. Trust me, nobody cares. They want to know what's in it for them. Period.
And what you just talked about, what's going to make them open up your web page. I grew up in the era, what's going to make them open up their door and
Yeah. Yeah.
not tell you to get off their front porch. Now they do that with a click. They get off your front porch, but I don't open because of bad titles and reputation of the people. I don't open 10% of the emails I get every day, and I get hundreds every day.
Both
And it's
do.
just go away, go away, go away. You must be intriguing quickly.
Okay, how long was I muted, Ben? Too long? I think we lost ourselves. Okay, are you still there, Ben? Looks like we got lost. Okay, I'm going to end it.